Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships. And I am particularly excited about this Friday highlight today because I'm finally featuring the Tier 10 Japanese torpedo destroyer, the Shimakaze. I think I only have one video on this destroyer like several years ago. I've abused the Shimakaze line in the sense that I've used it as the reset line for a research bureau. And then last week, I realized I've never featured this ship. I don't even have an upgrade commander build video of the Shimakaze, and it's like one of the most popular destroyers in the game. And I thought, well, we have to fix that. So now I'm up to 28 battles in randoms with the Shimakaze, and we're just shy of being a super unicum in Shimakaze. And this, I think Shimakaze is just really fun, and I'll kind of break in and talk more about the ship. But what I want to do is I have two video highlights before the main battle highlight. I think you'll stick around for all of it. I think it's good stuff. All three of these battles just happened last night. And there's two things I want to illustrate, in particular with Shimakaze, within these first two clips. One is having a battle where, lineup is everything, right? But when you have a flank that the enemy destroyer doesn't protect the flank, what you end up doing as an enemy destroyer, or let's say you're a destroyer and you don't protect your flank, especially in a battle like this, we're on the 1-2 line here in this map, a hot spot. A Shimakaze pushing up, especially in this flank, can be like really dangerous because you just give full access to the battleships. And that's what we've done here. We read the map, we saw that A was beginning to be capped, there was a destroyer that ran out towards the 5 line. So I knew I could run up this line and unchallenged by any enemy destroyers, at least to get started off here on this enemy Montana. Now we do two things here. One is we only give him 2 of the 3 racks. We're running the 12-kilometer torpedoes. I'll talk more about the torpedoes a bit more. And I'm hanging on to the 3rd rack. I feel like I tend to do this a lot. And what I'm doing right now is I'm reading the battleship. So typically after you torpedo a battleship, they resume, they start exiting forward because he was in reverse. They panic, oh, I got to move forward now. I'm a sitting slow duck if I keep reversing, right? And so I kind of read he was slowing down, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's going to re-accelerate forward. And we're going to get the kill on him here. The enemy destroyer comes to fight us, but we actually end up gunning him down because we outspot him after he goes dark, and with this smoke, it's the Teal 10 Italian destroyer. So that's what it looks like with Shimakaze when the enemy team doesn't protect the flank. In this battle, what does it look like when an enemy destroyer is protecting the flank? And so we see that was it a George Hoffman or whatever? It's a tier 10. It's one of the newer tier 10 ships they just introduced into the game. It's a German destroyer with a 6-kilometer hydro. And so what does it mean for you when you go up against kind of more of, I don't know if Hoffman's really, I think it's mostly a gunboat. I mean, it's hybrid, but it has the guns, has 6-kilometer hydro with the smoke. I think it's somewhat like a Schultz, if I remember right, tier 9 Schultz. And so what happens when you go up against a opponent, that destroyer that has better gun performance and can just easily take you out? Where it kind of changes your stance. So it really helped us the CV spotting. So what you want to do is, there's 2 things that happen here. One, we know that destroyer is, so we want to kind of sit out in this kiting position. I'm checking his conceal 6.4. My Yoshino's kiting, my Oregon's kiting. So that tells me don't push. You don't want to push into a destroyer like the Hoffman. So what you want to do instead is sit in this kind of kiting position, right? So my conceal is 5.6, but the Hoffman's 6.4, but the Hoffman having a 6-kilometer hydro, and he's probably likely going to be running it here early in the game. As we kind of ping RPF where he's roughly at, then that means I only have a 0.4 kilometer difference. So one of the things I don't like that I end up doing here, I make a mistake on. I try to get all 3 racks off, and I don't get the 3rd rack as far over, so I keep reversing even further. And there's not much more space for the Hoffman to end up running into me, and he does. So we should have already kind of been coasting forward about 1 kilometer or a quarter speed, half speed. That's what I really like to do in these type of encounters. So I kind of messed that up. And the Hoffman, he makes a good play here in the sense that he does what most destroyer players wouldn't do necessarily. He's pushing me because he sees my team's kiting back. And I wanted to kite back to be a little bit more already, even before we got spotted, to kind of go into the, as he pushes in towards me, he gets closer to my team, right? But then there's another sense where you can bait gunboat destroyers in doing this. So I can smoke up now that I'm outside his hydro. He can't see me. He's still spotted by the Oregon, by the Yoshino, and then by our United States, which I didn't, in the heat of the moment, I didn't quite catch he was coming in. And then we get to punish him because he kind of came too far forward into our spawn, into our lines. So if you have destroyers that are like that, more of like that gunboat destroyer variation, or radar destroyer, really strong hydro destroyers, you want to set yourself up in a way where you can quickly get out and kite away. And that was kind of the point there, except I should have been going forward like quarter speed, half speed, so I could have hit the engine boost and got a little more distance. So I could have remained dark, but kept him lit within that 0.4 kilometer gap, as an example, if he kept pushing in. So this battle here really shows, all these battles have been, kind of showcasing the strength of Shimakaze, but also it really comes down to player skill. I think with Shimakaze, certainly, I think the meta's harder now for Shimakaze players. And that's really due to more hydro in the game, more gimmicks, more hybrid ships with planes, a lot more radar destroyers. You have more of these tough hydro gunboat, hybrid gunboat destroyers. So it means that the Shimakaze player, commander, has to be playing more and more wiser, I think. And one of the things that makes Shimakaze really powerful is, you understand your ship's limits, but it's also the big thing I think is what helps a lot, and you'll see that in this video, I think, is predicting what enemy players are going to do. How's the destroyers going to position? How's the cruisers going to position? How are the battleships going to position? How are they going to maneuver, right? So a lot of, I think, the big plays you can make with Shimakaze is just trying to read team movements and trying to see what they're doing, almost like you're in their head. And that just comes with time, it comes with skill, and it comes with an understanding of all three of those classes, right? If you're only a destroyer main and you never play cruiser main or cruisers or battleships, you'll kind of wrestle with that. It won't be so great for you, right? So I'll talk more about that. But for now, we know a Trump is over here. So airstrikes, another one of the more newer gimmicks, since Shimakaze is among the earliest destroyers in the game of World of Warships. And I decided sometimes what helps a lot with Shimakaze if you play off an allied destroyer player. So here I'm playing off the allied Chungmu, which is great. So we end up spotting the Yugamo, or he does, not me. But also the big thing with being a destroyer player is when you go up against other enemy destroyer players, you have to pay attention to what's behind you. So the Yugamo dumped those torps for the Carnot, and I ended up getting, I almost died from that if I hadn't popped my engine boost, which kind of helps you a lot with this get out of jail free card. I shot my forward turret and I didn't need to, and I lost some hit points. The Trump got more hits off on me. So far, the cap is still being ticked. It's not the Trump, it's the Yugamo still sitting in the cap. And with Shimakaze, smoke screens are torpedo magnets, right? So that's part of the intention of dropping 2 racks. So again, you kind of see me hanging onto the 3rd rack. Sometimes I like to have it in reserve if a player pushes me, as an example. And we get first blood, Dev Strike, he stayed in the smoke. Now, I just dumped my 3rd rack off there, and the reason why I dumped that is, it's kind of a safe sense of security on this map with C-Cap, because that Trump is sitting there, and I'm like, Trump could just decide to reverse back into the cap, or try to get himself in a position where he can get more reverse out to get his torps off into our cap or over into our 10 line. So I'm thinking, if I was a Trump, if I was a DD player, I could see that making a wise move, but Trump doesn't have hydroacoustic search, right? So he ends up getting spotted by our Chungmu, so we can see what's happening. So we bring him really close to death. He took 22,000 hit points, and I really think about opening up here, but I decide not to. I think Trump would have died before I would have got my salvo over to reach, because I have a St. Vincent back up on the 10 line, and I'm much more concerned about taking a high explosive salvo from St. Vincent, because that British 457 can really mess you up. So there's going to be a little bit of a lull here for a moment, so let me talk a little bit more about the ship. So Shimakaze has 3 different types of torpedoes. You have 8 kilometer, like, what are they, like 80 knot torpedoes? I can look here. Oh, it's going to take longer than I thought. I think they're 80 some knots. Oh no, those are the 20 kilometer ones. Yeah, so they are, where's the speed? I'm blind. 79.8 knots, so 80 knots, right? You come stock with the 20 kilometer torpedoes, which are really their noob tubes because their detectability range is 2.5 kilometers. I typically just run with the 12s. They have a 1.7 kilometer detection radius, 70 knots, and that's 80 knots as well on the 8 kilometer torpedoes if you build into Swift Fish. It's really hard to make 8 kilometer torps work. Maybe you can do an ops more easily as an example. But otherwise, you know, there's a lot of 10 kilometer, a lot of 12 kilometer at the high tier in randoms. And I think 12 just works the best because they're a little bit more stealthy. A little less reaction time for battleships like this St. Vincent. We're going to go back and torp versus taking 20 kilometer torpedoes. The other big thing that there's a lot of variation in the community on, where I say among the player base, is Shimakaze players not taking the survivability expert, excuse me. I'm all for taking survivability expert on Shimakaze. I mean, to each your own, right? Without, ooh. So we torp the Jaeger. Part of the ordeal, I'll talk about it with Edgar. But part of the deal with Shimakaze players is like the argument is I want to maximize my torpedoes, RPF, or maybe it's like you also want to take brisk. So you forgo survivability expert, so then you're only running around 17,900 hit points. And even with a normal commander, if you take survivability expert, a standard commander, you'll get up to 21,400 hit points. But I believe in survivability expert so much. I have one of the seasoned commanders where that bumps me up further. Let's see. Oh, did I put the wrong commander? Oh, it's not functioning properly. Okay, it's 21,400 with standard commander, 21,900 with the seasoned commander, and then also taking. Did they fix it? Yeah, the Charlie Kilo. Yeah, plus 5% ship HP. So that puts you up to about 22,000 hit points. It's like technically 22,995. So I have a lot of hit points to play with. So I really like it. I've had multiple games that have been decided by me just having a few hit points left. And if I didn't have Survivability Expert, the game would have been lost or would have died and not been able to make even more plays. But back to this, I'll talk more about that tomorrow in the upgrade commander build video. So again, you saw us, we only used 2 of the 3 racks. Debatable, I could have used 3 racks on the St. Vincent and possibly yoinked him there. St. Vincent has a pretty strong torpedo belt armor. But again, I'm holding this 3rd one, and I've also wanted to hold it because I didn't know if the Edgar and the main player were going to push back into C. So we won this flank, but Chungmu got too close, he died. Our Carnot left, and then our battleship, is it I don't remember whoever it is, they're on this 7 line, F7, E7. They all left the flank. So they kind of left it to me. So for me, that's fine. It just means I can't like just, go elsewhere on the map, go through the 2 channels there on the EF line. But instead I'm going to play here. And what happens, when we caught that Jaeger out, I wasn't intending to kill a Jaeger. That was total accident, but it worked out really good, right? Is a lot of players kind of stay stagnant on this side of the map behind this island here. They'll position kind of angled away or full bow in or bow facing back to spawn. So you can get quite trollish if you kind of sit here and like what I just did and kind of fan out your torps. And I only used 2 of the 3 racks. The 3rd rack hasn't reloaded. But what I'm thinking here is the Edgar player is going to come over here and want to cap. And that's what I want to keep this 3rd rack in reserve for. So I saw that ace up my sleeve. So you don't have to follow my example here. Like, it's possible that if I had fired all 3 racks here, because Edgar's going to take 1 torpedo. Maybe we would have just killed Edgar outright. Or maybe we did more damage initially on the St. Vincent, right? This is just me and how I've been playing the ship naturally so far. And this is a part of the reading the movements, right? So we know he wants to probably go flip the cap. They're down a lot of ships. So there's a lot of pressure on him. The other thing you want to notice here is I'm not constantly flipping between my guns and my torpedoes. If Edgar or other players have priority target, what you end up doing is you flash them. I'll say 1 targeting detected, 1 targeting detected. And that kind of gives them an idea that maybe the destroyer player around, if they were running it, if they're wise enough, is dumping torpedoes on them when you flip back and forth constantly, right? So I just typically run around with just my torps out. So they never know if I'm actually going for them necessarily. So we end up killing the Edgar player. So it brings up to 3 kills, 157,000 damage. And then the game is essentially going to run its course now. And that's just us playing a flank. And I think even the St. Vincent player got really upset with us in chat. He called us a really bad player just because we were just simply torp spamming battleships. But it's like, it's kind of what this ship is designed to do, right? So there's probably a lot more we can talk about Shimakaze. I'm going to do a follow-up video next week and talk about Shimakaze in 2025. And I can kind of break my thoughts down more on that. But for now, that's the battle where we got 2 death strikes, first blood. 9 torp hits, 3 kills, some defended ribbons, 157,000 damage. And as I kind of talked about early, it's just reading the flank. When your team is able, you yourself or your team is able to kill the enemy destroyers, it really opens up a lot of opportunities for you in Shimakaze to push deeper into a flank. I think central positioning for Shimakaze can be a bit tricky. Maybe it depends on the map. But we topped the team with 2,600 base XP. Trash DD player, by the way. Starting to do really good. We had some pretty strong teammates, so our team was just stronger than their team. And then here you can see our kills and doing a lot of damage on the destroyers this game. So that's one of the reasons why I quite like RPF. I get into these RPF torp fights sometimes with other Shimakaze players or torp-focused DD players. And it can be a lot of fun. 55,000 spotting damage there as well. That's the other big thing that Shimakaze does, if you're playing it relatively correct, is you end up providing a lot of spotting damage. So a lot of my games lately have been like 50,000 spotting damage to, I don't know, like 80. Yeah, my average is 53,000 spotting damage as I look at it now. So Shimakaze just, it's very potent. I think in the current meta, and I'll get into this more next week, it just requires a lot more conscious play in what's happening on the map. I mean, your AA sucks too. You have a long gun reload time, but these guns, which I didn't even talk about, they're 127mm guns. They smack pretty hard. The high explosive alone does 2,150 damage, and you penetrate 21mm, and I can talk more about that penetration capacity even later, perhaps. But this ship's really fun. I quite like it because it's more of a passive play, and so it's a little bit more relaxing for me. Of course, there are times if you get caught out and you make a mistake, then you can die quite quickly. So it's a little bit of a gamble at times, but not as much of a gamble as perhaps other Tier 10 destroyers here in the game of World Warships. So if you liked today's video, make sure to catch the video tomorrow where I'll do a full deep dive into my upgrading commander build here on the Shimakaze, explain and give some other possibilities. You know, maybe like, why don't you take Brisk Flimsy, because you probably get a lot of benefit out of that, and that's certainly true. We'll talk about tomorrow. But for now, if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I would appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.